Hello and welcome to a special conversation hosted today by the Law Council of Australia to recognise and celebrate International Women's Day 2026. I acknowledge that we are meeting on the lands of the Woiwurrung and Bunurong peoples of the Kulin Nation. I pay my deep respects to their elders, past and present, and in recognising International Women's Day today, note the strength and the resilience of First Nations women across our country. My name is Tania Wolff, and I'm the President of the Law Council of Australia. I'm joined by the Honourable Michelle Rowland MP, the Attorney General of Australia, and Kate Eastman AM SC, a leading voice in discrimination and human rights in our country. It is fantastic to be joined today by two exceptional women leaders in law and generally for this discussion. Our collective experience is a testament to how far women have come in this profession, which has been long shaped by male-dominated structures and traditions. I'm proud to say that 2026 marks the second time in the Law Council's history that it has had two consecutive women presidents since our establishment in 1933. International Women's Day carries real weight in Australia and abroad. It's an important moment of reflection for the Australian legal profession, given our fundamental role in the meaningful realisation of the rights of women and girls. This year, the United Nations is emphasising that rights must be afforded to all women and girls. This is an important reminder that often gender intersects with other equity concerns, and we need to consider those challenges in this light. In this discussion, we're going to reflect on our experiences in the profession and both where we're at and what still needs to be done to achieve true gender equality in the law. So thank you so much to both of you, Tania and to Kate. What a delight to have you both. I have a number of questions to ask. I'm sure we will run out of time, but I'll start with you, Attorney. I'd be very interested in what your pathway was into the law, what led you into this profession, and what might have been your earliest influences that shaped your interest in justice.
Well, I was always interested in public affairs, and growing up in Western Sydney, I always had this sense that I had to try harder than everyone else, but I didn't quite know why. And I was really fortunate. I had people in my class who didn't have the phone at home, they didn't have a car in their families, and I had a really stable family. My dad left at 6 a.m. and came home at 6 p.m. And in our house, when you turned 14, you had to go out and get a job, which is what I did. And I worked as a checkout operator for 8 years, and right through the end of high school and right through university as well. So, I was very lucky as a young person, and I was encouraged to do well academically. I got enough marks to get into law at Sydney University. Although I'll be honest with you, I was a far better student by the time I was doing my master's than I was as an undergrad. But I always enjoyed history and public speaking, and I think my attraction to the law was pretty obvious sort of early on. But I ended up choosing a couple of different pathways, but eventually I had my first interview for a legal job, and it was at an up-and-coming firm called Gilbert and Tobin, and I was offered a role there in an area that I'd never worked in before, but I was very interested in, which was competition and regulation. And I ended up being partnered up in a growth team of the telco, media and IT space. And it was there that I really learnt about the transformational power of ICT. And so I worked on really interesting matters with really interesting people. And I've really just talked about the law there because I've been talking for a little while, so I'll stop talking now before it gets onto the political side. But my 10 years doing that was really formative for me, not only in terms of legal skills, but also in terms of life skills. And I think above all else, if I had to name the key thing that I learned, it was about teamwork and collaboration. That's what Gilbert and Tobin taught me. And I think that any law firm or any legal environment that teaches you that is the best environment.
That's wonderful. And an important sort of expertise to have, given what you're doing now and what you've done since. But what made you go to politics after that?
It was a bit of opportunity, good timing, luck. So I ended up being elected for the first time in 2010, and I was the most marginal seat in New South Wales, third most marginal in the country. But the good people of Greenway and Northwest Sydney elected me 6 times. And if you even had to ask me at that time I was elected, or even the first day I walked into law school, you know what, one day you're going to become the Attorney General of Australia, I would have laughed at them. But not because it's silly. Women should assume they can do that. But I never thought I'd be good enough to be able to do that. The kindest thing that was said to me was by a fellow cabinet colleague the day we were getting sworn in last year. And I had, Kate will know this, you know, I had imposter syndrome as well. One day someone's going to find out that I don't have all the answers immediately. And this person said to me, you don't need to be the best lawyer to be Attorney General. You need to be the best politician who happens to be a lawyer.
What an important reflection. And I would say that would resonate with both of you, both the imposter syndrome that too many women face and experience, and the idea that we might not be good enough for something. I think that, you know, we're not Robinson Crusoe in that respect, and it's really an important message for young women and young women aspiring lawyers to hear that, particularly from you, attorney. And I'm sure, Kate, you might have a similar reflection. One final question, then I'm going to move to Kate and then blend with both of you. But you've now been in the job in the top legal role in the country as the first legal officer for not quite a year.
Not quite a year.
About 9 months. How has your impression of the legal profession changed, or your understanding of the legal profession changed since you've been in this role?
Well, I sort of always knew this, but I see my role as being someone who amplifies this, and that is the legal profession. We are solutions people. We want to make things work. Like, you know, if you're an in-house counsel, your job is to work with the teams in whatever area of practice or whatever client services you're giving. It's about making things work and helping people to facilitate that. So I think there's a huge message that I also have to give across departments and agencies and cabinet colleagues, is that we are facilitators of solutions. We're not the barriers. We are not looking for problems. Like, we actually want to make things work. And, you know, this is a government where the Prime Minister said this is the term of delivery. So there's a big role that I play in making sure that the advice that comes out of my department, out of the Australian government solicitor, is really solutions focused. And can I say, they are already really creative people. Yes, we do test the boundaries of constitutional limitations, but of course we do so in a lawful, measured way, and one that is really solutions focused.
Wonderful. Thank you. Kate, as a leading light and, you know, the major force behind so many important changes for the profession generally, and in relation to women's issues and discrimination, what do you think are some of the concrete steps that need to be taken now to expand the benefit of better workplace experiences, not just for gender, but so all women in Australia, across diversity and First Nations? What do we need to do?
Well, thank you, Tania. That's an enormous question. I'll do my best to answer. I think sometimes when you're answering these questions, there's a little bit of a benefit of reflecting and looking back and seeing what were the problems that have occurred, or the barriers in the past. How did we address those barriers at that time, and what have been the results and outcomes? And so what can we learn from history when we think about our vision of the future? So we're now 105 years or so that women are allowed to even be lawyers. And so much has changed in that 105 years. But it's essentially accelerated from the 70s and then super accelerated in this century. So if you look at the past, the first thing was just even women being part of the profession at all. And the numbers were so tiny for such a long period of time. But if we now look at women in the profession, we're almost 2/3. And that's you know, a really incredible change for the profession. It's becoming more feminised. So that's an important milestone. And numbers have always been sort of a good indicator of women's progress. But when we think about that, we need to look at who are these women in the profession. And I think the history says it's sort of a one-size-fits-all for women. And it turns to exactly your point, is that we have an image of who women should be in the profession. And often that women, though that doesn't reflect an image of women who come from a really diverse range of backgrounds and experiences. And what we need to really sort of think about now is that women are not just a homogenous group and we're all the same with the same interests, needs. What we now need to really do is to look at the experience of women in the profession through the intersectional or diverse lens and saying, how are we responding to the experience of women from a whole range of different backgrounds and different experiences? So when we look forward, that's going to be, I think, the next question for us in the profession is how do we build diversity and how do we make that sustainable in our practices?
And we're about to start to get some more data on this, aren't we?
We are. I do like data, but data is important because it helps us measure progress, but it also helps us ask the questions as to if we do have pockets of problems, why does that exist? And then we can build solutions based on an evidence-based approach.
So where does this next shift have to occur in terms of what we're doing for women? Where is it to broaden our perspective about the experience of women and what needs to change?
I think so. And I think if I reflect on what I was told about coming into the legal profession many years ago, perhaps even before the attorney, but there weren't a lot of women. And so I came into the profession working in a large law firm where the first woman partner was celebrated in a story in the Sydney Morning Herald. And so we really sort of looked at shining a light on women who'd achieved certain things. Now I think what we need to do is to make sure that if we're going to build that sustainable practice, we need to be encouraging women, particularly young women coming into the profession, to have their voices heard and to say to us what are their expectations. What do they want in the way in which they practice law, and what do they want in the way in which they can contribute to society? So their interests are going to be very different from the generation of which we are members, because we've built our experience on the past of women being special. We often heard the stories of overcoming the barriers, and so you'd go to a women lawyers event and you'd hear all the horror stories about the terrible things that happen to women in the profession. And I think the next generation and the younger generation is like, well, that's not going to happen to us. And so let's listen to what they want and not just tell them the bad stories, but also tell them all the really good stories and the things that they can be doing.
And perhaps for both of you, but what are the proposed reforms, or what are the recent reforms that will have the most impact on advancing the experience of women in law?
Can I say, I think some of the big impacts in law reform and law change that affect women are not just confined to women in the legal profession, but women as workers. So if I reflect back on the last 5 years, for example, there have been significant law reform in employment and workplace issues where thinking about the operation of employment and industrial law on the impact of women is now front and foremost in how we think about industrial law working. So you've seen a really significant development in equal remuneration, in recognising how gender bias operates in the way the law works, particularly in employment settings. You've seen changes to the law about flexibility at work, the right to disconnect, the right to flexible working hours, the right to request certain things. Like all those things are really reflecting women's experience in the workplace. So those law reforms are absolutely fundamental. And I think the other part to it is that women are not just workers, they are also women who work in families, they care for children, they care for parents, they care for other members of their broader and wider family community. And I think the way in which the law responds to the experience of women, particularly the right to live free from violence and harassment, that has been a really significant change as well. So I would not have imagined, for example, 10, 20 years ago that we would have in our workplace laws a right to domestic violence leave, recognising that that's a particular experience that some women have, and that's a barrier to their economic opportunities and also their working opportunities. So those two areas to me are the really significant reforms because they build those systemic changes in the way we think about women's participation in society generally. The Attorney will probably said there's a lot more law reform and changes that have also occurred, and I'm not overlooking that as well. But those are the two, I think, sort of fundamental areas.
Well, Kate's comments are astute, as always, and I absolutely agree with them. I think there's two other areas for me. The legal services direction being updated, I mean, that was the result of a long period of consultation. And whilst the headlines were about increased rates, it was also about making sure that there were systems in place, and that direction basically said we are going to look at more diversity and we are going to encourage diversity, so including of women. So I think that was really important. Kate will also know much better than me at different stages of a woman's legal profession where their opportunities are to get ahead, and the whole point of that legal services direction in that regard was to give women choice and to reward them appropriately for that choice. I guess the second part to it is not necessarily law reform or legislative in any sense, but when you think about it, some of the most critical roles in our economy are being held by women for the first time at the same time. And I completely agree with Kate that we've evolved from this period of, and I think it was important to hold up women as examples of my first female partner here. And, having come from Gilbert and Tobin, like Danny made, the first female pro bono partner in Michelle Hannon, and that was hugely celebrated. But, it was law firms really, I think, ended up, trying to outbid each other in terms of, we've got to promote women. And that was a great thing. I think it was really important, particularly for junior women lawyers, to say there is an outcome. So that was important. But when you think about it, across government, for the first time, we've got a female head of the ACCC, a female head of the Reserve Bank, a female head of ASIC, a female head of the Department of the Treasury. This has never happened before. And so I think over, credit where it's due, it's over successive governments as well, but these women being brilliant over a long period of time. The first majority female caucus and cabinet in government now. But I would like to say too, it's not just the numbers there that are important, just like it was never just important to say we've got this percentage of female partners. But those rankings, I'm sure, had even a subliminal impact in the minds of people running firms back in the day. And I think it's important, but I think what Kate is saying as well, it's not the only thing as well.
Absolutely important to note. Perhaps one final question, because I'm understanding that we don't have enough time to continue this discussion, which could go for hours and hours. But as the first legal officer of the country, and given the breadth of your career and all of the different things you've done beforehand, what advice would you give to young females contemplating a life in this profession?
This may be controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's true and does show some vulnerability. I have been incredibly lucky, but I also chose very well my life partner. So my husband is a partner in a law firm. He is really the primary caregiver. When we go to kids' parties, when I am able to turn up, he's the one who knows all the parents. I wouldn't know who half of them are. But I think making career choices that also reflect personal choices in your life is an important thing to consider. And, if I had to go back and talk to my 25-year-old self, I would say, good on you. It actually wouldn't be regret. And I didn't realize what a good package I was getting as well to, have chosen as a life partner, not only someone as smart as he is, as dedicated to his 2 daughters as he is, but a righteous person as well. So I think when you're thinking about your career, none of us is an island. Some people may not choose to have partners, but think about your friends and the people that are going to be your rock throughout your time. So,
what a wonderful reflection about the important scaffolding that assists women to achieve their potential. And Kate, from your perspective?
Well, I think sometimes a kind word, some encouragement to somebody who may have no experience of the legal profession, studying law, not sure whether they can or will be a lawyer, is to be able to have the opportunity to speak to people who've been in a similar situation and to give that encouragement that this is something that you can do. And sometimes those small conversations for a sort of old person who might sort of see they have no consequence, but they can be really significant to a young person. I had that conversation with someone, and that changed the way I thought about what I could do or what was possible. And so I'm a strong believer that the profession should be one where we're carrying the baton. So we've taken the wisdom from our elders. You've seen Elizabeth Ebbett today, and fantastic generation of women who are really the trailblazers and the exceptionals, to then hold that baton and then pass that on to the next generation. But to do that with kindness and compassion, and to build inclusivity for all of us in the profession. So a kind word or a quick catch-up can make a really big difference. That's a small thing that we can all do as lawyers.
A small but significant thing. And what an extraordinary discussion and conversation we've had. So much to take away from it, so much to be inspired about what they lay ahead. It's been an absolute pleasure for me. And as we celebrate this Women's Day, we're reminded that the Australian legal profession, although it has made important strides that we've all talked about today in advancing this movement towards gender equality, we have some hurdles still in front of us. Thank you so much, both of you, for your leadership and for your efforts in this really important area, and for taking the time to speak to us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Tania.
Thank you.